And before I go ahead, I would also like to know, do you know about the LED panel?
About which LED panel?
LED panel, yeah, that's, let me show it to you. Okay. So basically, this is the panel where you will get all the information regarding the course. So you can go to the Koenig website and go to login. So this is the Learning Enhancement Tool panel, that is the LED panel. The email address that you have to enter is your registered email address with the Koenig, whatever email address you have used for your registration. If you want, I can confirm it with you. The registration, I think the email address that you have registered is Al Shema. Sorry, let me just share it on the
Sorry,
chat.
sorry to interrupt. This one, yeah, I have already logged in and downloaded all of the materials.
Okay, that's great, great. So you already know the ID password, right? There is no
Yeah,
issue
yeah.
with it. Great, amazing. So I'll just go ahead with the module now. So you already know about the LED panel, and we will be learning about user experience design and UX tools. So the software that we are going to cover is Adobe XD in this training. And I will be covering up basics of user experience design as well. So there would be some part of theory. That is, the first module is going to be an introduction to user experience design. And in this, we will be covering up aspects of great user experience, UX versus UI, what is the difference, roles in UX, and what are the career options that you can choose from in the user experience design. After that, UX design techniques, what kind of techniques are usually used for a great user experience. So those all topics we will be covering up today. Then for tomorrow's and coming up sessions, we will have the module 4, that is UX design ideation techniques. So one by one, each and every technique is also discussed in each module. And UX design, creating scenarios and storyboards technique. In this, we will learn about the importance of scenarios and storyboards and how to create a one which is beneficial for your user experience design. Okay, and then we have module 6, which has the analyzing user data techniques. So we will learn about the different techniques of analysis, how to, we have gathered the data. Now we need to know and analyze it to get the final actionable data, how to do that, what are the different process and what are the different techniques which you can follow. Those all things will be covered up in it. Then we have the introduction to UX prototyping. So what is prototyping? The basics of prototyping, process, tools and resources used in it. Those all things will be covered up in the module number 7. Then in the 8th module, we will have the paper prototypes technique. So what are the different techniques of paper prototyping? And when I discuss about these topics, you will know in detail and you will be able to differentiate better between prototyping and wireframing and sketching. All these terms will be more clearer to you. Okay. Then we have introduction of UX multi-device design. So in today's world, if we are doing any design work, and if it is device specific, like you are just working on a single device, it won't be much beneficial, right? So we have to think about multi-device, we have to think about mobile devices, we have to think about screens, we have to think about different devices that are used and make the design accordingly. So those all things will be covered up in it. And then we have the practical tips and tricks of user experience design. So the basis, so most important things to keep in mind and how to utilize alignment, proximity, and these features to the max while doing the design work. So these all things we will be covering up one by one. Anything you want to ask or any questions in this?
Yeah, so from what I see, the practical will begin from I think 7.7 and
Uh,
ongoing.
yes, actually, these are the theory topics. For the practical, I'll just go ahead now. This is
Okay.
what we will cover up in practicals, and I'll be taking two practicals at in one training. Basically, the practicals will go side by side along with the theory. So these are the theory topics, and then in the practicals, as I have told you, we have Adobe XD software. So in that, first, the basic introduction of the software, installation, and how to set up a new project. These things will be covered up. Then how to create the graphics and use the basic tools of designing. So you will be getting time to create your own design first and work on it. You will be creating a project throughout this training. Okay, adding images and text to it, organizing your content for a more aesthetic feel, and working with the assets and CC libraries, which is quite interesting. And then we will be using effects and repeat grids to make our work more easier and fast. After that, how to prototype in Adobe XD, share your prototype with others, and sharing the design specs and exporting the design. That all things will be covered up during this course. Okay.
Okay.
So now anything else you want to ask?
No, it's okay. It's fine.
I hope whatever you wanted to learn is being covered up in it and you are fully satisfied with the topics, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. So that's fine. And I'll just share one more thing today. So as I have said, I've already explained you the modules that we are going to cover up and whatever topics we are going to cover up during this training. This training is going to be of 5 days. So today is the first day of our training, and I'll just write down the break points. Now, since it is 8-hour training, it won't be feasible for both of us, like working for 8 hours completely, like continuously 8 hours. It's quite difficult, right? So we do need some breaks. So I'm going to set up 3 break points and 2 tea breaks and then one lunch break. So let me know, is there any preference? You have any prayer time or do you want any specific time for the break?
Uh, for the prayer and lunch,
Yeah.
and for the morning breakfast, like after one
Uh,
hour.
okay, actually, we just keep the breaks for after 2 hours. Like right now, I believe the time over there might be 9 o'clock, around 9 o'clock.
Come again, I didn't hear you.
Uh, I guess the time over there right now must be around 9 o'clock,
Yes,
9:15
correct.
or something, right? Okay. And do you have any morning prayers like around 12? Do you need any specific time for the break, or is it okay if I set it for 2 hours in between?
2 hours in between.
Like right now it's 9 o'clock, so we can have our
Yeah.
first break
Until
at
like 12
11.
and 11.
Yeah, usually I just keep it after 2 hours, so every 2 hours you have some break to
Yeah, yeah.
change the information.
Okay, no, no, no.
Okay. So 11 a.m. we'll keep our first break. This can be of 15 to 20 minutes, roughly. I'll just keep it 20 minutes for now. So you can have your tea and uh, if there are any prayers, then you can go for that break. And then we have the second break, that would be the lunch break. So again, after 2 hours, so it would be like around 1 p.m. or approximately 1 hour. Have our third break, that is going to be the tea break. So this is usually again after 2 hours, so around 3 p.m. I hope this works. Anything you want to modify or keep it 10, 15 minutes
Yes.
forward back?
For the second break, can we like make it start from 12:30? Because the prayer time is like 12:30. Like,
No issues. Yeah. Oh, keep it 12:30 p.m.
yeah,
and
okay,
yeah, that would work. No issues. And the third break, then I'll just modify it a bit so that the gap is not way too much. Okay.
okay.
Keep it then 2:30 p.m. I think this is good to go. No issues.
Yes, it's okay. It's fine.
All right. So we will be following up this time. And in case, yeah, so the time difference is there in, over here, right now it's 11 o'clock. So yeah, there would be a bit of time gap. So can you just let me know exact time? What is it over there?
Now it's 23.
9:23. Okay. All right. So I believe it's 1.5 hour difference. We'll just follow that. Okay. So that is about the break timings for today. And in today's session, I am going to cover up the first three modules and then the basics of Adobe XD. So we will start with our practical session after the first break. And before the first break and lunch break, let us cover more of the theory part. Okay, I'll just share my screen once again. I'll just share the document now. So you can see the slide, right?
Yes, I can.
Great. So first of all, introduction to user experience design. Now, before I go ahead, I would like to know from you, what do you understand by the term user experience? Any idea? Have you heard this term before?
User experience, it's like the UI of the application and how do we improve the overall experience of the user with the specific application or website or like this.
Okay. So I'll just cover up it in more detail. After that,
Okay.
this concept would be clear to you. And you just mentioned the term UI. We will be discussing about the difference between UI and UX as well. So if I have to talk about UI in a layman language, UI is a part of UX, but they both are not completely same. They both are different in quite a lot of terms. So first of all, user experience is the quality of experience a person has when interacting with a specific design. So a good UX should answer how and why a user should use the product. Now, whenever we are creating a product, it should be kept in mind, why do we need this product and how we are going to solve the problem of the user by creating this product. That is the part of user experience. Keeping the user in mind, you are designing a product, you are creating it. Now, user experience can be strongly influenced by behavioral factors such as emotions, beliefs, preferences, and even cultural backgrounds. So if we notice that Google search, I'll just take the simple example of Google search. It displays you the search button or the search option in different languages now. Earlier, it might have been in English throughout all over the world, but now we have the preference of translation of the language. So that is the point of user experience. Keeping the experience of the user in mind, we are modifying our product or upgrading it, and we are keeping the consideration of cultural backgrounds. We keep in mind the emotions of the user while designing those products. So one more example of it can be like if someone is doing the design for a fashion industry or for something related to females. So they will be focusing more on the colors like purple, pink, or some colors which would be related to that part of the society, rather than keeping it more neutral shades like brown, blue, or any other. Just an example. So it can be anything. Whenever you are designing a product, think about the user for whom you are designing. Why do they need your product and how you are going to satisfy their needs? That is about the user experience. Now, since we have taken into consideration many things while considering the user experience, that's why it is basically technology agnostic. So we don't need to depend on technology for the UX. UX, you can see, can be anywhere, and it is like in every part of the design. So we might specialize in web or mobile or hardware devices, but UX principles apply across the board. It is like in everyday life, you can experience it. I'll give you an example of it. Suppose you have purchased a house. Now, in that house, it was looking very beautiful from outside. But when you started living in it, the plumbing was not good. There was some leakage, and maybe there were some other damages inside the house which were not visible from outside. But when you started living and when you started using the house, you got to know about those drawbacks. So, this is the example of a bad user experience. Okay.
Okay.
And using this example, I will be able to explain you the difference between UI and UX as well. We will go to that again in the next coming up slides. So basically, user experience is in each and every field. So these days we have modular kitchens. We are modifying our house structure also to make it more friendly for us, to make it more usable for us. So that is a part of user experience. Now, UX design is everywhere, from how we interact with the smartphones to how our home is designed. Everything might not be well designed, and hence UX is such an incredibly exciting and rewarding field to be in because it basically applies to every part of our life. Okay. And what do I mean by a well-designed product? So basically, a well-designed product is concentrated on designing for the user's needs and understanding necessary tasks involved in using a product or service to accomplish a goal. So basically, if I have created a product, it is looking beautiful, just like the example of the house. It was looking very pretty from outside, but it was not usable when I started living in it. So that is not a well-designed product. A well-designed product is going to be, by the look also, it is going to be very good. And when the person is using the product, they should be able to overcome their problems. Okay, that is a well-designed product, which keeps the user's need in mind and accomplishes the goal. Now, user experience can mean different thing to different people. If you ask people what is user experience, everyone is going to answer differently. So some will say it's an umbrella term which covers all the parts of designing. Some will say it's a movement, some will say it's a process. So basically, user experience covers visual design, information architecture, interaction design, usability, user research, and content strategy. And many more things fall under user experience, just like your UI is the visual design, basically. So we will be learning about those terms, the aspects of user experience as well. So let's see that. Now, the key aspects of user experience, we might have heard about the terms like user interface and usability. What are these? How are they different from user experience? These are the aspects of user experience. By saying this, I mean that they come inside the user experience. So user experience covers a vast array of other areas too. A user experience designer is concerned with the entire process of acquiring and integrating a product. So it includes designing, branding, usability, and the function of the product. All these things come under the user experience. It is a story that begins from the device, uh, before the device, basically, before you design a product, user experience takes place. And by the end, when you have delivered that product, even after that, when the customer is going to give you feedback, then also your complete process is in place. Okay, so it's not just about the user interface, it is about the entire process. First of all, you research and try to find out why the product is required. So the product is not designed yet, but the journey of the user experience is started from there. Okay. In between, if you face any difficulty or if you want to ask anything, you can just type it in the chat or let me know, right?
No, no issues.
Okay. So there's a quote by Don Norman, who is the inventor of the term user experience. No product is an island. A product is more than the product. It is a cohesive, integrated set of experiences. Think through all of the stages of a product or service from initial intentions through final reflections, from first usage to help, service, and maintenance. Make them all work together seamlessly. This whole process is the user experience. Okay. Now, products that provide great user experience, example, iPhone, you have the advancement in it every time there is something new to be launched, and these products are designed to keeping in mind the target audience, so they try to cover up all kind of people. Even voice commands are there to help the people who cannot see. So for the blind there is an option. For uh, challenged people also, there are multiple options by which they can operate the phone. So that is one more example of how a great user experience can be put into action. Now, these all these products keep in mind why, what, and how, the three main important questions of the user experience. So similarly, user experience designers don't just focus on creating products that are usable. We concentrate on other aspects of the user experience, such as pleasure, efficiency, and fun too. So the person should be happy when they use the product. Okay, now let us understand the terms in UX design. What does it mean? Why, what, and how? If you might be aware, there is a process that we follow whenever we are writing an article or whenever we do anything at all. It is a good practice to ask these three questions to ourselves: why, what, and how. So, in case of our training itself, let me take this example. Why have you enrolled for the training? There might be a purpose behind it. Now, what do you seek to achieve by the end of the training, or what are we going to provide to you, and how it is going to solve your future problems? So these three questions should be answered in each and every scenarios, right? Similarly, in the UX design also, we have these three questions. So why is the motivation or the values and views behind your design? What is the functionality or features? This is majorly the part where your UI comes into picture. Okay. UI takes into account the what section of your UX, and how is accessibility and aesthetics. Okay. So as a UX designer, you should consider the why, what, and how of the product. Why involves the user's values and views, which users associate with the ownership of the use of the product. What addresses the things people can do with the product, its functionality. How relates to the design of functionalities in an accessible and aesthetically pleasing way, pleasant way, basically. So UX designer starts with the why before determining the what, and then finally the how, in order to create products that users can form meaningful experiences with. So these are the three steps that we take when we are following the UX design. Now, if I talk about user interface, what is user interface? So you have also mentioned the term UI. UI design, it includes the aesthetic appearance of the device. It includes the response time. It includes the content that the product is going to provide to the user. So it is more focused on the how user uses the interface. So if you might have noticed over here, why is your motivation? That is the idea part when you create the idea of the product. What is how, I mean, uh, what is basically the functionality of the product, or what the user is going to get from that product, and how is the part where the visual aspect comes into picture. So how you are going to deliver that product, how it is going to look like, the aesthetics and the accessibility part comes into how, and that is what we cover in the UI part. Okay, if you can see the difference, UX considers all the other aspects of designing, and when it comes to the visual aspects, that goes into the UI. So UI is a part of UX, but you cannot say UX is a part of UI. Okay, so in simple terms, UX is a broader picture of UI, or you can say UI is just a small part of the complete process of UX. So it answers the how of the UX design, and UI should be easy, efficient, and the interface should be aesthetically pleasing. So those all things come under UI. Now, if I take the example of a simple website, in the UX, we have personas, we have user stories, we have user research, we have usability testing, and even after creating the product, there is feedbacks and gathering of the data, and the complete process keeps on going on for the maintenance. Inside this, the wireframing and the visual aspects of designing go under the UI process, in which you create the layout, you create the visual design, you create the brand of your product. So that is UI. Let us understand the difference in much more simpler terms and with more examples. So basic example to understand UI and UX. This is the content, what people are looking for. This is the interface or the tool that serves it up. And this combination of the content and the tool is known as your user experience. Okay, let's see the parts of which are involved in UI and UX. So UI considers output devices like your mobile, and what are the devices where the visual content will be there. So those all things are considered in UI. Action buttons, user controls, tools, input devices, how you are going to interact with the product, basically, what will happen when you click on a button. So these all things come under UI, the content and the visual design of the product. But when we talk about research, when we talk about site mapping, when we talk about analysis, user testing, these all things come under the UX part. The sketching over here, which is mentioned, is the base, or when you just ideate your product, that part comes under this sketching of UX. So we will understand the different stages where we sketch out the ideas. So user experience includes prototyping and all these stages. Okay. Now, a simple example of UI UX. This is a ketchup bottle. Earlier, we used to have a ketchup bottle in which it was not easy to take out the ketchup, right? There was no option of squeeze. We have to just wait for the ketchup to pour down, right? Have you seen these two designs before? The difference between these two designs? Yeah. So that is the example of a UI UX. So this was looking very pretty. It was aesthetically very pleasing. But then the researches were done and it was found out that this is not easy to use. So according to the usability of the user, we have created a new design in which you can just squeeze and take out the ketchup bottle, and it can be kept inverted also, so that it is easier and quicker to pour out ketchup. So this is an example of a good UX, and this is just a UI. I hope now you might be more clearer about the difference between UI and UX, right? Great. So just to combine these two, UI plus UX equals to interactive excellence. So this is good UI, but there is no UX in it. When we add the UX to the UI, it's the best design that we can create. Now, after the terms of UI and UX, there is another term which comes very closely related to these two. That is your customer experience. Now, how is it different from the user experience? So, customer experience has a greater scope. It is, you can say, even a bigger picture for the UX. So, there's a big circle which is known as CX. I can just create and show it to you. Just a second. So, you can say this is CX and then UX, and a part of UX is UI. So this is how you can relate these three terms. Basically, CX is even a larger part of the UX. Now, how these two are different, let us understand that. So CX is an umbrella concept encompassing all channels and all products within the same brand and how the user feels about them. How is it different? Customer experience, it includes customer service, advertisements, brand reputation, sales process, pricing fairness, and product delivery. But UX involves usability, interaction design, visual design, information architecture, content strategy, and user research. These all things come under UX. Now, to understand it better, I'll give you one more example. So first of all, what are the different aspects of CX or what CX refers to? We have already seen that in the image as well. Now let's understand the difference between a good and a bad, I mean the UX and CX basically. So first example is of a bad UX, but a good CX. Now first, let's say you bought an app that edits picture on your phone. Now, however, when you actually started using that app, you find the interface confusing and you can't even find the features you wanted. So is it a good UX? No. Basically, you are facing difficulty in using the application. So that is the example of a bad UX. But then there was one customer care number or a helpline number at the bottom of that application, and you have called that number. A friendly customer service representative calls, answers your call, and explains you step by step how to access the feature you wanted. In addition to it, the customer representative also gives you a $25 credit for your trouble. So this is an example of a good customer experience. That's the difference between UX and CX. Anything you want to ask in this or anything which is not clear?
So, also the time that takes from submitting that questions or those complaints until it's resolved is part of the CX as well.
Yes, it is a part of CX because you are talking to the customer representative over there. You are directly dealing with the company. It would be
Okay.
more clear with my next example. Now, we all often book tickets. So sometimes what we do, we even use a third party. Over here, we have Make My Trip, and there are on the Google also, you can just search the flights from one place to another and book it from there instead of going to the actual website of the flight. I mean, like Etihad has its own website, but some people use the third party to book the tickets, right? So in this case, what happened? I want to order flight tickets. I want to book my tickets. So I have downloaded an application for flight booking and it was quite easy. I've booked my flight. Everything is done. Everything was self-explanatory. So I was very happy with the UX. Okay, now when I reach the counter of Etihad Airlines, what happens? There is some kind of problem that occurs, like the check-in is not being through, or the person over there, the attendant over there is quite abrasive, and the staff is not friendly, they are very rude. So this is an example of a bad customer experience. So the flight company, Etihad Airways, I'm not, I'm just quoting an example over here. I'm not, pointing out any scenario. It's just an example, a fictional example. Okay. So the company is related to the customer experience, but the flight booking from where I did the flight booking, that application was completely friendly and it was quite easy to use. So that was a good user experience. Now, by this example, I believe it would be quite clear what comes under customer experience and what comes under user experience, right? Is there any query or doubt you want to clarify now? Yeah. Okay, great. So for satisfied customers, you need consistency between the UX and CX. You need to make sure your application is also good, as well as your customer service representatives, and everything is kept in line for a happy customer. Okay. Now, crafting a successful UX career will require commitment to push yourself away from your screen and out of your comfort zone into the realms of public speaking, group facilitation, stakeholder management, and visual communication. So, when we are talking about the user interface, when we create the user interface, not much of interaction is there with the users. There is no need for user testing for a UI designer. But when you talk about UX, that is the user experience, you have to be more vocal. You have to communicate with all the groups in your company. You have to understand the user's need. You have to understand the company's need, and manage everything between the designer and the stakeholder. Okay, so key roles in UX. What is the complete process of UX? And in it, a small part of design comes for the UI. So UX designer follows a process. Here's what it looks like. First, you create a strategy or an idea. Then we research on it. Research includes your competitors' research, like who is there in the competition, what products are already available in the market, and how your product can be different from them. Then you have your analysis of the research. So I have done my research, but now I need to gather the data and find out the information which is required for my product. So using that data, how you analyze it, how you create personas, what is personas, and everything will be discussed. So scenarios, personas, and synthesis is done in the analysis part. Then we proceed to the design part. This is the part where UI comes into picture. You create the workflow, you create the wireframes, you create the branding, you add the visual aspects and the content of your product over here, and then you create a prototype. After that, the production takes place, the visual design, development, technical testing. If everything is good, after prototyping, basically prototype is not actual product, but it is used for user testing and everything. So after all that, when you have evaluated your product, okay, this is good enough to go, you create a, you go to the production section. Then there is a beta launch. Sometimes people do the beta launch if there is any glitches found in the product. Then you do the beta launch, that is launching your product in a small group to test it, evaluate, and then again the same process is followed. But when the product is completely perfect and you don't have any bug in it, or there is no issue, you just launch it to the market. So that is the complete process of the user experience. Now, what are the different techniques that you can use? So first of all, There is a contextual inquiry. We will be discussing about these techniques in detail in the further modules as well. This is just for your overview, what different techniques are involved and what are the different processes in which they come in. So when during the research, there is one method of research which is known as contextual inquiry. In this, what we do, we interview and observe users in the location that they use the website or app to understand their tasks and challenges. This information feeds our understanding and why users might behave as they do. So contextual inquiry is also like you are observing the user while using the product and it's in their own environment. Okay, we will understand it in more detail when we go to the research section, when we go to the module of gathering data and analyzing it. After that, personas, this is another term. So this comes under the analysis part. In this, we create a fictitious identity based on the data that we have discovered or gathered. Based on that, we create a fictitious identity which reflects the user groups for whom we are doing the designing. And this technique captures the who of our UX. So for who you are designing the product, a persona is created of that character. And this is a fictitious persona. It's not related to any real character. It's based on your study of the information that you have got. Maybe out of the data that you have covered, 10 people were very interested in traveling. Okay, out of the data of 15 people, I got the data and I got to know that 10 people are very keen on traveling. So I can create a persona who is more descriptive about those 10 people rather than the 5 people who are not interested in traveling. Okay. And maybe pick up 1 or 2 points from those people, from both the groups individually and then create two personas. So that can also be done. So you have to understand your user and for that you can create a fictitious identity as well. Okay, this fictitious identity reflects the original user but not exactly points out to it. Okay, then we have scenarios. So scenarios is basically a day in the life of your fictitious personality. So a day in life of a persona comes under the scenario. And this scenario is related to your product as well. So how your product comes into picture in their day-to-day life, that is covered up in scenarios. So first you create the persona, then you create the scenarios. This all goes into analysis process. After that, we create the wireframes and then the user testing is also done. So we will be covering up all these topics in detail as well when we discuss about the UX techniques and how to go through each and every step of these, right? So user testing is basically, it occurs in almost every stage because in the research, we gather the data, then we analyze that data. After that, when the design is created, you have to do the user testing after that. After the production also, the user testing is in place. Whatever feedback you get from the user, you modify your product based on it. These are the basics of user experience. Now, next, we are going to talk about careers in user experience. All right. So, so what are the different careers that we can opt for in the user experience design? Let's see that. From whatever I have explained till now, you might have got the idea that user experience is something which is required in almost every aspect, whatever it may be. It can be your housing, it can be your basic pen design, how to make it more user friendly. Anything that you are designing involves user experience. So it is a very hot field and recruiters are often struggling to find a great UX. Now let's see UX is not a single career. So, as I have already explained to you, it's a whole process. So, it can be divided into different roles, or if one person is hired in a company, then he is responsible for the complete process and all the stages in the UX. Okay. So there are many job openings which come under the UX, and often the companies which are like great the big companies, they go for the option of having different people of different roles under the UX team. And some small companies, which are the startup, they often go for a single person who is responsible for all those roles. Okay, now let's see what are the different aspects of a UX. It could be a design UX designer, it could be a research uh, UX researcher, it could be a strategist person. So these are the three categories in which the UX can be divided. In design, you have interaction design, visual design. In the research department, you have user research, information architecture needs to be created, usability and analysis needs to be done. Accessibility is also considered, how accessible your product is to the user or how they are going to use it basically. Then the strategist person takes into consideration the content strategy, UX strategy, and how your production is going to benefit the company. Let's understand it in more detail. So, career options in UX design. Design careers, basically, you can be a UX designer, and most of the time, as I have mentioned, in smaller companies, the UX designer is responsible for all the roles which I have just told you about. And in some companies, they have different team for the user experience. So in that case, the designer's role is just limited to designing, and they don't have to do much of research work. They don't have to do much of this creation of the strategy. Okay. So as you might expect, UX UI designers cover both the user experience and the visual aspects of the product. They conduct user research, create low or high fidelity prototypes, carry out user testing, and take care of the interface design, everything from color schemes, typography, right through to icon design, imagery, and interactive properties. This is the case of smaller companies. Now, in larger companies, UX and UI designers work together but typically divide their responsibilities. So the UX designer's goal is to create functional, reliable, and usable product. UI designer's goal is to make accessible and beautiful interfaces. Okay. The UX designer will usually create a wireframe and then hand it off to user interface designer, who will take care of the product aesthetics, that is the color scheme, typography, and introduce delightful details into that wireframe. So wireframe is just the layout or the structure where what needs to go. That is maybe designed by the UX designer, and the UI designer can take care of the color schemes for that particular product. In small companies, both the roles are done by one person, and in bigger companies, it can be divided. So if you are going for a UI UX designer role, you'll need to master key UI design skills in addition to your user experience design principles. So if you are a UX designer with a keen eye for visual design, you might find yourself moving into a UI UX design role. Okay. Now, apart from this, as I have said, there is one more career path which the person can choose in the field of UX, that is UX researcher. So as we saw in the previous slide of design technique process, there is a different whole new stage for research. So in that, a person will be required, and that is the role of a UX researcher. So research plays a crucial role in the UX design process. When we know more about our users' needs and wants, we can create the best solution for them. And UX designers go on to specialize in this aspect alone and become a UX researcher. They focus on all things research related. They conduct research with the real users, gathering both qualitative and quantitative data. We will understand this more in the next modules as well. So they they try to find out what the people thinking is, what they feel, and how they behave with the product. Now, they then share these insights with the entire product team, helping everyone understand the target audience and informing a user-centric design strategy. So ultimately, UX researchers take the guesswork out of the design process, making sure that the team has enough information to make data-informed product decisions. So without a UX researcher, it would be very difficult to know your target audience, and you will be creating the product, but it would be like a guesswork, and you are not sure whether the product is going to be usable by the users or not. Okay, so UX researchers are usually high analytical and data driven people, since a lot of their work involves gathering and analyzing data to glean useful insights. Okay, on a day-to-day basis, UX researchers will plan and conduct various research activities such as discovery interviews, concept testing, contextual inquiry, and usability testing. They'll determine the scope of each study, set research objectives, and recruit suitable participants. So following a user research session, the UX researcher will analyze the data and translate it into actionable insights and product requirements. UX researchers also take an active part in creating user personas and customer journey maps. So there are many terms which came into this paragraph: personas, customer journey maps, and actionable insights. We will be discussing all these when we go to the analysis section. Anything you want to ask till now? Okay, great. Now, coming up to our next session, that next career path which you can opt for is a strategy career. So in this, UX strategist is the role. And as I have discussed, a strategist person needs to consider both users and the company. So UX designers often find themselves operating in the space between the end user and key business stakeholders. UX practitioners aim to find a sweet spot between users' need and business goals. This is where UX strategist comes into picture. His role or his task is to find a balance between end users and the key business stakeholders' interest. Okay, so you can think of UX strategy as the convergence of UX design and business strategy. So UX strategists bring a user-centered mindset to the boardroom. They discuss it with the stakeholders. They present the ideas on behalf of users, understand the business goals as well, and balance things out between it. They create a strategy which would benefit the business or the company and keep the users' needs also into picture. Okay. So UX strategists tend to come from a design background and eventually move over to the strategy side. If you are keen to get more involved in the business side of things after a few years in the industry, you might choose to specialize as a UX strategist. That is the role of UX strategist. And the person is responsible to coordinate between the design team and the business and make sure that they both are working for the common goal. So a UX strategist's role is also highly analytical. They will synthesize data to identify strategic opportunities in the market, determining what direction the product should take to benefit both the business and the user. Okay, so that is all about the UX strategist, a person who is good at bringing ideas which benefit both users and the stakeholders goes for this option. Okay, then we have the UX writer. This person is mostly responsible for the content of the product. So you can think of a UX writer as a copywriter who is working for the company. So writing isn't typically considered part of the product design process, but the words on a product interface have a tremendous impact on the user experience. So few people hire a UX writer. They craft all the text that the user encounters when using a product or service, from the error message to the pop-ups, and when you enter the wrong password to celebratory messages like you have won the game or whatever messages or text you see on the product, that goes for the UX writer. Okay, this is the role of a UX writer. They have to create a good content, appealing content, which will be catching the attention of the user instantly. So they'll write concise, user-friendly copy that guides the user through the product. And what is the difference between UX writer and copywriter working in the marketing industry? While both roles require outstanding copywriting skills, UX writers and marketing copywriters have different end goals in mind. So the goal of marketing writer is to sell a product to potential customers. UX writers, on the other hand, consider the user's experience once they are actually interacting with the product. They write to guide the user through the product, helping them from getting from one point to another on the website or the product steps. Okay, that is the difference between a UX writer and a copywriter for the product. So anything which involves the term user experience, just understand this point that needs of the user will be kept into mind whenever the term user experience come into picture. So without the term user experience, if there is someone who is a copywriter, that person is writing for the company. Their main goal or the main aim is to sell the product. But when we talk about a user experience writer, these people consider the needs of the user and they provide the content according to that aim in mind. So the end goal for them mainly is the user satisfaction. Okay. Now coming up to the next role which the person can opt for in user experience, that is your information architect. So what is information architect? These are considered as the user's journey across the site to determine how to organize the information on each page and how individual pages connect to different uh, pages to create a logical navigation. Okay. Their goal is to make it easy as possible for the user to find what they are looking for. So an information architect will create the architecture of the website and provide all the information in a manner that is usable by the user. So the user can easily go and fetch the information from the website. Okay. The information architect will work closely with UX practitioners, the designer or the researcher, to identify user needs in relation to the product, and the UX writer to come up with content labels which help users decode the meaning of the different navigation options. They might conduct card sorting sessions. We will talk about the card sorting sessions in our coming modules as well. So information architecture will be covered again in a module in detail. And just understand that this is where the planning and designing of the whole website is done, the information of the website, what information will be provided on the website, and where the user can find that information, these all things will go under this section. So you create the low fidelity wireframes that show the relationships between individual screens or content sections and use those for usability testing. And then you create the hierarchy of the content, sitemaps, and outline of the overall navigational structure on your website. These all things come under the information architecture. And the person who is responsible for all these things is called as the information architect. Okay. So these were the major roles which the person can opt for in the UX industry. And sorry. So UX is a community of practitioners, and connecting to your fellow UXers will contribute significantly to your growth and knowledge in UX. As I have already mentioned, UX will always involve interacting with more and more people, the stakeholders, the users, and understanding their needs, balancing it out to create a product which satisfies everyone's need. Okay, so you need to create a product which is user friendly, keeping in mind how the company is going to benefit or how the company is going to make the profit from that product. So both the things should be kept in mind. Now build your T-shaped UX skill set. So this is basically your maximize your experience, develop your soft skills, and for the depth part, keep practicing your specialty and never stop learning. And you can keep yourself updated on your specialty. Specialty can be content writing, that is UX writer, or if you're good with strategies, you can become a UX strategist. If you're good with research, then you should go for the UX research and keep on enhancing it or keep on upgrading it time to time. That is the whole concept of T-shaped UX skill set. Okay. Now, possible career trajectory is shown over here. What all different career paths come under the UX industry. So there can be a senior UX architect, and the web designer can know about all these things. So a UX designer is there, senior web designer is there, web developer is there. So this is, you can say, a small industry person, single person is hired, a web designer is hired to do all the things. Then as you move on to a larger company, there are different departments for each role. So you have many career options, and that would be it for the careers in UX design. And we will be going to the UX design techniques overview now. So anything you want to ask or add on to it? Okay, great. So after these two understandings, I believe the basics of the UX and UI might be clear to you, and it also might be clear what benefit you are going to get from learning about UX. So we have understood the why, what of our journey today, and how you are going to gain it. We will be learning about the softwares. We are going to upgrade our skills. That is how you are going to achieve a great UX. Okay. Or achieve the knowledge of how to create a great UX. So let's move on to the techniques of user design. So UX design techniques overview. I'm just going to explain the UCD process right now, and we'll take a quick break. After that, we will discuss in detail about the techniques that are involved. Okay, so let me maximize the screen. And before I go ahead, I would also like to know, do you already have the access to Adobe softwares? Okay, so you have not installed anything yet. You don't have Adobe XD on your system, right?
Yeah, so those applications are paid, correct?
Yes, you can have the trial version. I mean, you can get the trial for 7 days from the Adobe's website.
Okay, so all of the application you need, or
Uh, we will be working on Adobe XD right now. So
XD.
currently, if you have that installed or if you have that downloaded, that would be more than enough for now. And later on, if you want, you can go for other courses and learn about other softwares and download them. But right now in
Okay,
this
so
training,
XD on.
yeah, it's XD for this training. Okay, so after the lunch break, we will be covering up the practical sessions. So in that case, you will be able to download the software. You will, if you face any difficulty, we can, you know, process that and make it easier for you. So that's why I just asked in advance whether the software is already installed or does it need to be installed. Okay, no issues with it. Fine. Let's go ahead with the UX design techniques overview. And once we have covered up the theory part, we'll start with the practical basics of the Adobe XD. What is that software, how it works, and how to create the new project in it. So basics would be covered up today. Okay, let's understand the process of user experience. So it would be impossible to break down in step-by-step format the ins and outs of every UX technique, but I will try to, explain the maximum of it and list a range of techniques for you to experiment with and explore. So these techniques are implemented during the user experience process. As we have already seen, this is the visual aspect of the design, which we call as the user interface, the upper part of the glacier. And below that, there's a lot of thing which goes into picture, like which goes into effort. So we create the skeleton, we create the structure, we create this, we understand the scope of our product, we understand the strategy of our product. So these all things go in the background, and the complete process is the user experience. Okay, let's understand it in more magnificent way. So computers are magnificent tools for the realization of our dreams, but no machine can replace the human spark of spirit, compassion, love, and understanding. And the user experience considers compassion. It takes into account the need of the user. So you need to be empathetic with them. You need to understand the thinking of the user. And for that, only a human can do it. We cannot depend on machine for all these tasks. Okay. So what is UCD? UCD is user-centered design, where you keep the user as your main study, and based on the requirement of the user, you do all the process of designing. That is the user-centered design approach. Okay, it is an interactive design process in which designers focus on the users and their needs in each phase of the design process. Now, first phase of the design process is the discovery or research, in which we gather and analyze the user. We create personas, we create user scenarios, and do the content survey. You do the competitor analysis. These all things are done in the discovery or research uh, part of the user-centered design. After that, concepting is the ideation part, where you create the ideas, where you get the where you create the sitemap, wireframes, and the basic design of your product. Then comes the prototyping and user testing, in which the prototypes are created. You test it with the users. If there is any bug, you can evaluate your product and do the research and those analysis again. And once the product is completely good to go, you can launch it. Okay, so this is the basics of UCD or the user-centered design. So first you have a user, they have some problem or goals to be achieved. You have created a product for them. And then after the analysis and gathering of the data, the wireframe is created and then the prototype and the final product is launched. So each technique leads on from the previous one and creates a paper trail of design decisions. Let's understand the benefits of UCD. Why do we need UCD? So user-centered design, why it is beneficial? It saves development time because you have already taken into consideration how your product is going to be used by the user. You have taken into consideration the pros and cons of it, and you have already modified your product to best suit the user's needs. So that's why it is going to save time for development. Everyone is on the same page, so the team members know about the goal and they are aware what they have to create to solve out the problem of the user. So there is no differences. Like example, you have opted for this training and I have already explained to you what all things are going to be covered up in this training. So we all are on the same page. We both know that, okay, Adobe XD is the software that we are going to use, and we are going to learn about the user experience design and the UI concept in this particular training. So that is how UCD benefits for everyone else to understand and be on the same page about their production. So goals are clear, they know what they have to create, and it's easy to communicate ideas when you have some site maps, when you have some prototype with you. So when you are communicating with the teams also, different teams, you can just share your ideas using different methods which are there in UCD. Okay. And then it is easy to discuss changes because you have the user data, you can analyze it and you can make the decisions based on that data. And you can discuss about the changes in the product based on that particular data. So everything is in line when we follow the UCD process. This is another way that is known as the design thinking process. So this is something which comes under UCD. In the UCD, you have the research department, you have the gathering of the data department. In the design thinking process, you start from the understanding of the problem of the user. So basically, when you have analyzed your data and you have got some points out of it, then your design thinking process comes into picture. You think about the problem of the user for whom you are designing. So empathize. Then you find out a problem statement out of it and create a solution to it. So you ideate a solution. After that, build a tangible representation of this solution, or you can say a dummy of the solution using which the user can interact and understand how the product is going to benefit them. And then the testing is done on that dummy. After that, the product is launched if there is no issue in it. Okay, so this is design thinking process, which is a part of UCD, you can say. In UCD, the discovery or research section is done. After that, this complete process comes into picture for the designing. Okay, now what is the difference between design thinking and user-centered design process? Design, basically both are, I would say, 99% similar. They both involve empathy, they both involve problem solving, they both involve collaboration of the teams. And main difference is just the final or the aim behind both these processes. So design thinking is more focused on the desirability, feasibility, and viability of a product. User-centered design is more focused on the user needs and feedback. Okay, that is the major difference between design thinking and user-centered design. User-centered design is always going to keep user needs on the top. Design thinking is going to keep all the aspects in picture, like involving the business team as well. So design thinking is good for creating idea for complex problems, and user-centered design, you can say it is good for designing highly desirable products for a specific population or for a specific target audience. Okay, so you can also understand the difference, like design thinking is more for an innovative idea, something which was never there in the market before, something new which you want to launch comes mostly under design thinking, because you keep in mind user needs as well as the desirability and a long-term aspect of that product. User-centered design mostly comes into picture when you have to modify a product which is there in the market, or when you have to create a product whose competitors are already there in the market. So this is majorly used for already existing products, and design thinking is mostly used for the launch of new products or for creation of the new products. Okay, that's the major difference between the two. Just give me a second, I'll have some water. Okay. I hope I'm audible, right? Yeah. Okay, so let's come to the UCD process, the user-centered design process. The first part of it is research or discovery. In that, we gather and analyze the user data or the user. So start we start the process by typically gathering information through research. This can be accomplished by simply asking questions to the client and your potential target audience. You can work with the focus groups. You can check with existing analytics. And there are many other methods by which you can gather and analyze the data. So few of them are mentioned over here. First one, the most famous one, is the interviews. When we conduct open-ended, like when we conduct one-on-one interviews, so there are open-ended questions. You can ask the user directly, what do they seek to get from the product? Okay, just like I asked you, what do you aim to achieve from the training? So you were clear about the end result of this training, that you want to learn more about user experience. You want to enhance your skill set by adding Adobe XD also to it, right? So that is the main purpose. So you can understand the user's need more better when you have one-on-one training. I mean, one-on-one interview sessions. So this is one of the qualitative data collection technique. In this, you don't get the quantitative answers, you get the qualitative answers. The questions are also designed to prompt engagement and detailed responses. So, for example, one more example I can give. A smartphone manufacturer can learn how a user finds the phone interface. These face-to-face interviews last for about 45 to 60 minutes. And since it is a one-on-one situation, the participant can share much more than in a group setting. So if you want to get a more detailed feedback of your product, you can conduct the interviews as the information gathering technique. Okay, then we come to the focus groups. So focus groups is again one more qualitative data collection technique. In this, uh, we have a group of people, we bring them together and provide and ask them to provide feedback on our product, or ask them about the expectations they have regarding the product. Okay, so a moderator guides the session and interacts with the focus group participants. The goal is to prompt an open and candid group discussion. Questions are predetermined, so we have a set of questions that needs to be asked to the group, and detailed responses are taken from the group participants. Focus group sessions usually include 10 participants, and it lasts for about 90 minutes. So when we are, suppose we are launching a new video game in the market, so certain policy or campaign for social service is being conducted. These all things, when you want to do, at that time we can set up a focus group session, and we can get mass opinion, and we can analyze that data to get a clear picture of what we need in our product. Okay, so if I talk about the usability of these two options, interviews are more preferable when you already have the product launched in the market and you just want to get the experience of few people or a few category of people out of big mass. In that case, we conduct interviews. But when you want to get mass opinion, you can conduct focus groups and take the analysis or the gathering of the information from that. Okay, then we come to the next part, that is the surveys. So one difference between these methods, surveys, these are the quantitative data. Now, why it is quantitative data? Because we ask about the questions like how likely are you to buy this product on the scale of 1 to 10. Usually there is a scale given and the person has to select a number from it. Okay. And based on the data that we have collected or the information that we have gathered, we can find out the average and we can work on the numbers in this particular process. So that's why this is a quantitative data collection technique, and it includes multiple choice questions, which are close-ended questions. The person is not free to give their opinion in it, but they have to select from the specified options which are there. So surveys are good for conducting the or gathering the information in person, or when you want to gather the information on phone. In that case, you can conduct surveys. It focuses on research based on math and statistical analysis. Results are mainly expressed through numbers, graphs, or tables. And yeah, so I have already given you the example of it as well on the scale of 1 to 10 or on the scale of 1 to 5. These all things are mentioned, or maybe you have specific options which are given. So how many people have selected good, how many people have selected average. So you can analyze the data based on the numbers. Okay. After that comes observations or contextual inquiry. Now we have heard about the term contextual inquiry before also. This form of quantitative data collection method observes the subjects within their natural environment where variables cannot be controlled. Basically, the person is at their home, maybe they're using their devices, and we have already taken the permission from the person to observe them while they are conducting day-to-day activities and understand how they interact with our product in their daily life, in their own environment. Okay, that is what contextual inquiry or observation is. Whether you are observing one person or a group of people, you can see how a normal day unfolds without introducing your own interruptions or influencing participants in this particular case. So most of the time you might get accurate data, or you might be able to gather more accurate information using this method. But this method is not always feasible because not everyone is keen to give the permission of observation, right? So that's the drawback of this particular method. Anything you want to ask till now? Okay, so I'll go ahead. This is one example of what is the difference between qualitative and quantitative data. So qualitative is descriptive information. Quantitative is numerical information. When I say I drink coffee every day, I'm not specifying how much coffee do I drink. But when I say or select the number of cups, so I drink 4 coffees every day, I'm specifying the number over here. And the person can work on those numbers. They can create graphs and tables. So numbers are something on which the data can be analyzed using average and mean. So quantitative data is where you talk about numbers. Okay, qualitative is where you are not specifying any number, but you are just telling the person that, okay, you do this kind of a thing, or this is your behavior. That's it. So I drink 80 grams of coffee every day. So this is also measurable. I hope qualitative and quantitative data is quite clear with this example. Wherever number comes into picture, that is a quantitative data. And wherever you talk about the behavior of the person or the numbers are not specified, basically, that is your qualitative data. Okay. So moving ahead with the next method. Now, I have gathered all the information, but it will be of no use if I cannot analyze it. So after the analysis, you can also create personas to understand the thinking of the user. So creating user personas can help designers step out of themselves and recognize that different people have different needs and expectations. They can identify with the user they are designing for, and the more designers engage with the user personas and see them as real people, the more likely they will be able to consider them during the design process and want to create the best product for them. So that is the whole purpose of creating a persona. You can see the example of how a persona looks like. It has the information, basic information of the person. And what is a persona basically? It's a fictitious it's a fictional user, you can say. So it's an example of a potential user, but this person does not exist in real life. This is something which I have created to understand the thinking of the user for whom I'm creating the product. So a deep understanding of a target audience is fundamental to creating exceptional products. User personas help a product team find the answer to one of the most important questions, that is, for whom we are designing the product for. So who is the user of the product? That is answered using the personas. Okay. So by understanding the expectations, concerns, and motivations of target users, it's possible to design a product that will satisfy users' need and therefore be successful. Yes, you
Yeah,
want to ask something?
yeah. So I just don't get it. Why it should be like fictitious? Like, why it's not like a real
Uh,
audience or something?
Okay, I'll tell you what, when we gather the information, there are some privacy issues, there are some copyrights, right? I mean, no one wants their privacy to be invaded or their information to be used without their permission, isn't it?
No, I mean like when doing the real thing, do we create like fake
Uh,
personas like this, or it's only in the training that we have fictitious IDs?
okay, when we are working on the product also, understand it like this. So when you are getting, uh, suppose you have chosen me as your persona. Okay, I'm a live character. I tell everything about myself to you, and you are utilizing that information to create a product. Now, some people might not like it. They might raise some privacy concerns. They might raise some authentication concern, right? Like in okay, many times we hear that Facebook is utilizing the information of people for and providing it to other companies, right? So these all scenarios should not happen. This should not happen. You should not invade anyone's privacy. That's why whatever data you have collected, you have gathered some information of different individuals. So you can create a fictional character or a fictional user of your own who has those characteristics, but in reality, that person does not exist. So later on, if someone says, okay, this looks like me, but that is not the person, so they cannot, file any charges against you. Getting my point over here?
Yeah, so it's only the personal data that is not
Yes.
real, but the goal and the needs are correct.
Yes, and the personal data is also modified a bit. Maybe I like brands like Nike and Reebok and other brands, but you have just mentioned one of those brands in your persona. So you are not creating exactly the same person from your gathered information, but taking out the major parts of it and then creating your own personal user. Okay, so that there is no issue with anyone else. You are not in conflict. Okay, so that's whole purpose of creating a user persona. And since you have to understand the mindset of a user, you need to note it down, or you need to create a profile of that person for whom you are creating the product. So that's why we go for this technique. So Clark Andrews might not exist in real life, but there might be another person who is of age 26 and who is a software developer, who is single and who lives in San Jose. So San Jose, the person might be residing over there. And I have just taken up the information of that person, modified a bit, maybe based on other data that I have gathered, and created a profile with a different name and a picture. Okay, so there is no relation, there is no connection of this persona to any real person. That's it. So user personas are sorry, archetypical users. They are fictional users, and the goals and characteristics represent the needs of a larger group. So we are keeping the information that we have gathered in mind and creating this persona. So usually a person is presented in a 1 or 2 page document, including behavior patterns, goals, skills, attitudes, and background information, as well as the environment in which a persona operates. Personas help designers to create understanding and empathy with the end users. That's whole purpose of the persona. You can see it's a Brazilian looking for flight to Europe, and I've just created a profile of it. What might be the personality of the person, gender, working hours, occupation, age. These basic information are given, location is given. And based on this information, I can create a product which will be beneficial for a larger group. So I have noted down the goals and frustration points from multiple users maybe into one persona. Okay. So it is written buy the cheapest and fastest flight for the next vacation. So this is a goal which most of the people want to get, right? It is common between many people. So that can be taken into example for the persona that you have created. And she wants to pay a cheapest price for a trustable company. So I want to book the flight for a trustable company. That is also one of the goal which is common in larger groups. So find the best day and time for a good price. Then frustration points are also mentioned. The apps were not clear about the necessary information to fill in. Requested to download the app. Didn't keep the price. Redirected to another website in another language. There were lots of ads on the website. So it may be possible that these frustration points are taken up from multiple uh, users in reality. But in our fictional character, we have added all these pain points so that once we see these frustration points, we can design the product which is going to help or benefit the masses. Okay. This is one more reason why we create a persona and not take the example of a real person. A real person may not have all these frustration points, right? There might be a person who is fed up with the redirection to another website. There might be another person who is frustrated with the request of downloading the app. So all those data I have collected and placed it inside one person. And that one person is a fictional character. Now is it more clear? Okay. So similarly, another example is there. So the major part is age, location, and occupation of the person, and what their main goal is, what are the pain points, a bit about their hobbies. These all things should be there in your persona to understand the person's behavior and thinking in detail. Okay. So after research and analysis, the designer can gather pain points and find the best solution which can resolve the user problems and be successful. Then they start with a design which can range from a low fidelity hand-drawn sketch or low fidelity wireframe to a high fidelity design. Early in the days of mobile web, we would sketch, wireframe, and design. Today, we typically design, prototype, and collaborate. Okay, so that is the difference from what used to be the process of designing to what it is now. And we will be learning about the ideation techniques in our next session. And this I'm going to cover up in tomorrow's schedule. So after this, we are going to go through the Adobe XD software. We learn basics of that software and practice it a bit. And by the end of the session, I mean, after our almost third break, we will go through the qubits section. And you might have noticed there is an option of qubits given on your LED panel as well, right? Have you seen that section in your panel?
What is the cubics?
Okay, qubits are basically the
Qubits test.
questions.
Okay.
Yeah, so it is basically to test your knowledge of whatever we have learned till now. The questions are based on the modules, and we have covered 3 modules till now. So you can take up the qubits for those 3 modules after our third break, after by the end of the session. The last 2 hours I'm going to keep for questionnaire. So I'll be asking live questions as well based on your understanding to know how much you have uh, gained from this training today. And every day we will be keeping this in process. By the end of the day, there would be a qubit session in which I will ask the live questions also. So I will share the link with you. You can answer those questions, and I'll also get a clear picture of how much you have understood the concepts, right? Okay. And you can go through the LED panel. You can see what all different options you have over there. So you have the courseware, you have the qubits, and you might even see the related courses which you can opt for. You might even see the feedback link for this training, which you can use after the training. I mean, if you like the training, you can give the feedback. And yeah, so these are the basic options which are there on your LED panel. Okay, so let's do one thing. Before we start with our practical session, let's take our first break. Okay. I think it might be around 11 over there now. Okay.
Okay, so let's take the break now. Okay, thank you.
Eh, Yeah, so I'll just set the timer for 20 minutes and we'll be back after 20 minutes. Okay. Thank you.